What is up, people? It's Dave, it's Duncan, back from Metal Epidemic for another album review. And for this review, Duncan and I have been checking out the new album from Norwegian Stonercore band, HÅNDGEMENG.
Yep.
Apologies up front if I have fucked that up.
What? No, you said Norway. Fine. I mean, that's.
Not, yeah, all good.
I mean, I don't think the Norwegians are going to get upset with that.
The band name, unsure.
Oh no, fluent, perfect
I'm
pronunciation.
going for HÅNDGEMENG, but I could be wrong. The band's new album, Ultraritual, will be released on March 10th via Ripple Music. So this band formed in Oslo. I'm just going to call them this band from now on. This band formed in Oslo in 2017 by brothers Martin and Philip on vocals and bass, Charlie on guitar, and Ola on drums.
Literally, the only one that sounds Norwegian is Ola. Like, I mean, the rest of the band sound like they could just, play up the road.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
You sure you're Norwegian? They had played
Yes,
together.
the name of the band is HÅNDGEMENG, Dave.
Possibly. They played
Allegedly.
together in various hardcore and punk bands in the early days, but the puzzle pieces didn't come together until HÅNDGEMENG were formed and the riffs got slower, the amps got louder. In 2019, they released their first EP, Motorcycle Death Cult, followed by the Grim Riffer EP.
Fucking amazing names. Yes.
Playing shows constantly, they became a band to take notice of in the Oslo underground scene. After parting ways with bassist Philip, longtime friend Kim took over as Groovemeister in the band. So, firstly, before I get into the album, I loved the lineup description of the band in the press release is amazing. So, the lineup is Martin, aka Elvis Presley. He does chants and rituals. We've got Charlie, aka Abuse Springsteen, who does riffs and mischief. We've got Kim, aka Jeans Simmons, on bass lines and coke lines, and Ola, aka Motorola, on pots and pans.
Oh my god. Ola Motorola sounds like the name of the most extravagant playboy that only summers in Morocco. You know what I mean? Only.
Ola Motorola.
Yep.
So this is a debut album, 7 tracks long, just over 40 minutes. HÅNDGEMENG, Duncan, what did you think of this debut album from this Norwegian Stonercore band? What did you think of Ultraritual?
So they're a mixed bag, aren't they? Because they're not just like Stonercore just makes them sound like they just do the stoner stuff. I'm quite glad you've given context. As always, I like to preface these reviews by saying I don't read the press statements. I go in blind, cold, and I go in raw. That's right, no rubber. Dear. And I take it as it is.
Yeah.
And the context you filled in there is like there is pace to this band at times. Like they can go quite fucking like a quasi blast beat at one point, as well. Yeah. So I mean, they're not like your stereotypical stoner band. However, that is all the way through it. It is the core backbone here. There's big old stonery, almost not quite down, but down adjacent sounding riffs. It has that kind of has that swagger of kind of 70s Americana about it at times, which I really like. The first thing I would lock on is the production. Production really like just centers this band. It has that kind of warmy, fuzzy, you know, like analog ampy sort of sound, which is absolutely necessary with this. The guitars aren't heavy, but they're not thick, if you know what I mean. They're thick with fuzz, but they're not thick with distortion or anything that would like. It's kind of that old way where like you would speak to like certain older musicians and they'd be like, "Hey, so you've got there a distortion pedal? Nah, you just do this with the amp." Like, well, but this pedal does it for me. No, fucking pedals. You just need this. The only pedal you need is a wah. You know what I mean? And that's literally it. You know what I mean? They have that kind of the vibe about them, which kind of feels like everything is kind of nuts and bolts, and like turning the knobs and all the rest. And it really works for them. It aids their sound. Kind of reminded me at times of kind of later day The Sword, even though The Sword is better produced.
Yeah.
But if you took the later day The Sword and then put them in the Brundlefly machine alongside bands like Graveyard, where you get that all that kind of authentic kind of 70s, very early 80s era, almost even Blue Oyster Cult-esque production, but it's churned at the end with something that does feel kind of very modern and does feel like they're taking the best elements of the old and marrying them with the better songwriting and at times the more progressive elements of the kind of modern stoner bands. The one thing about this band is they're not like no two songs are one-dimensional, which I kind of loved about it. Like, just when you feel like you're getting a kind of hook into where they're going, they'll like really slow a track down or go the other way and speed a track up. You get at times kind of ferocious punk beats. At other times they're happy to sit with a almost cheesy rock riff and let that flow over. Yeah. And then you've got the vocals on top of that, which are at times, dripping in melody, and then other times like nasty, savage, shouty. I mean, never screamy, but just that kind of raspy, you'll not be able to talk in the morning sort of vocals.
Yeah, I definitely got that. I don't know if that's coming from that, the hardcore roots that they had, from early on, but I definitely got that in some of the vocals, yeah.
Especially when you get like there's layered vocals in parts where you get like it's almost like a call and response with these kind of shouty, raspy vocals, and it totally works with what they do. I mean, they're happy. They're at times a band that are kind of happy to sit in the groove. If you're listening to tracks like Vision and Fire, that's a track that really it's the first kind of longer song on the album, but it's one that very much leans into those kind of more spacier, stonier moments. Really happy to let a riff sit there and just like put a smile on your face. But there's loads of little accents that they do at the end of bars that are really, really, really cool. Once again, authentic to the era. But it's not until you hit things like Temple of Tok or even Ultraritual, the title track, that they really start to let a kind of heavier side start to bleed through. Ultraritual is the one that is probably, if you're talking about hardcore vocals, is probably most in line with those kind of really aggressive, shouty vocals. In sections, not the whole track either, but it really works with them. But what I found like most kind of captivating from the band overall is some bands have the ability to go one way or the other. So they're really masters of the craft of the shorter form song. I give you all those hooks, all those riffs, all the widdly stuff. It sounds great, fucking yes. But then when they try and do a longer song, you kind of get to that point where you're like, the composition's maybe a bit off, you're repeating things too much. Like, HÅNDGEMENG are the other way around. Like, these somehow, at times when they were doing the shorter songs, I could have went for an extra riff. And when I say short songs, they're not short-changed. There's nothing under 4 minutes here. Yeah. And most of them are over 5. But, like, when you hear the closing track, which is just under 10 minutes long, Oculation of Mars, it's the one where I kind of felt like, if these guys wanted to do just a fucking full-on trip fest of like 9-minute opus tracks over fucking 6 songs, 40 minutes in length, I would totally dig that. I think they've got a really good idea of the craft. I think my only grievance with Ultraritual overall is at times the shorter songs kind of felt a bit safe, but not safe in a way where they were boring, just safe as in when you hear some of the later tracks, you can hear a more experimental nature come through, which you're clearly like more than capable of doing. So when the conventional songs kick in, there's maybe one or two, many of them on the album overall. Like I would have actually almost preferred longer songs with maybe 1 or 2 shorter songs in it than an album which is, and once again, the tracks are all about 5 minutes long, but in comparison to like the kind of 6 minute, 7 minute tracks and all the rest, it just kind of felt to me that at times that kind of shorter road were just the bits that I was starting to get my hooks into a song. And they say great, anything that's great should want you leaving more. And they definitely do that in Ultraritual. Like on almost every song, when it finished, I was like, that's fucking really, really, really cool. And it's difficult not to smile and bang your head. And like I say, when you get to, I'm sure it's Oculation of Mars, or it might be Tales No, it's not definitely not Tales of Thunder. Must Be Oculation of Mars is the one that you get the kind of quasi blast that kicks in, which fucking just floored me because I didn't expect it. It's not quite a blast. We're not talking like gravity beats or anything like that. It's just a you know, it's like a proper old school kind of blast beat, but it comes in a really unexpected way quite late into the song and opens up after this section of kind of prolonged melody. So they've got all these. It's really good. They've got all these tools they can implement. I just think that some of the shorter songs on the album could have been doing with being longer. It's maybe me just being selfish, and it definitely is a personal choice. But I dig what these guys are doing. I think they've taken the idea of kind of stoner metal, which we've heard. How many bands? Like fucking umpteen bands. And you kind of, when you hear that, there's a part of you that kind of feels like, I know what I'm getting here. There's a known quantity. Ultraritual as an album has enough twists and turns throughout its runtime with elements of kind of almost psychedelica or even, like I say, like that kind of hardcore punky snarl that give it depth and give it, I think, a re-listenable factor to it. You know, elements you just don't expect that arrive and don't overstay their welcome. They're a super interesting band. Like, genuinely, like one of these ones where especially on the first listen, every time I was like, all right, I get it now. And then the next song will kick in and there's a little flurry, or they try something different, or the vocals get more aggressive. I'm like, right, I genuinely wasn't expecting that. So it's a cool album. They're clearly very, 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 very good at what they do. And like, never change your production, lads. That's that right there will give me like a semi. Like any day of the week. I love bands that are just full in with the fuzz. You know what I mean? There's part of me that's like that. If you're going to do it, like, there's nothing worse than a band that, like, we're a stoner band and you listen to it, it's crystal fucking clear. No. Yeah, it needs to be cloudy, like my pee. So there we are. I'm getting it checked out, don't worry. So there we go. I like this quite a bit. I don't think it's an exceptional album, but it's hard not to pick up what they're putting down. They clearly love playing this shit, and it comes through in the music.
Yeah. Okay.
Reversal. Dave's the other way around.
I also really enjoyed this, but I do have issues with it as well.
Davey's got issues.
So yeah, I think as you go through this, you will hear little inflections of other bands. But what I liked was this band aren't out just to replicate a sound. There's definitely an element that's just HÅNDGEMENG in there, where it doesn't really sound like anyone else. And I think some of that comes from that background and the bands they've been in before. You can hear little bits of, as I mentioned, kind of hardcore and punk coming through in the vocals and certain guitar riffs as well. And then there's also a really cool blend of different eras going on here as well. You get more modern influences. There's a little bit of that Kvelertak kind of vibe going in there. Even little bits of Mantar as well coming through. And then there's something quite retro about it that comes through. That's like almost like a callback to like the 70s. And the band intertwine into some of that kind of classic rock, and even something a bit kind of trippy and psychedelic as well. And as you said, each track on the album will give you different sides to the band's sound, always keeping some of the main components each time, and just kind of adding something new along the way. That opening track, The Astronomer, gives you like the big stoner riffs. It's got plenty of groove, but with a more kind of hardcore edged vocal, and some kind of classic rock vibes and some of the kind of tails of the riffs. But it also kind of caught me off guard with the vocal chants. I wasn't expecting that to come in, but I thought they worked very well against the rhythm of the double kick drums that they use as well. I think it does what you'd want as an opening track. It's a bit of it's a mood lifter, and it's groovy. Cro-Magnon versus Neanderthal gives you more of a kind of almost punk rock vibe, but it's blended with this kind of like spacey psychedelic streak. Visions and Fire, but slower in tempo. There's some kind of doomier tones in there as well, which I quite liked in the guitar work, but still with a bit of that kind of aggressive hardcore vocal. Temple of Toke was the other one. It's quite similar. It's maybe slightly darker in tone. Again, quite doom-laden and fuzzy, with the kind of spacier elements and some cleaner vocals as well to give you a bit of kind of variance on that side of things. The, I the cleanish vocals were okay. I wasn't a massive fan of the spoken word stuff. It felt a little bit off. But the kind of bigger notes in the chorus I thought were really good. The title track then like picks the pace back up. There's some kind of Scandinavian kind of punk coming into that again, but it's got that stoner kind of undertone to it as well. So I really like the fact that they gave you a bit of variation, but didn't venture too far away that it sounded out of place. The last two tracks for me was where I felt like they started to go in more of an experimental direction, with track 6, Tales from the Tundra, being almost kind of instrumental for the first half, and then introducing a kind of small amount of vocal, kind of small vocal burst, I'd say. I think I would have kept that track fully instrumental, if I'm honest. I like the kind of trippy, more experimental guitar work. But when they tried to like switch it back into the more riffy kind of stoner vibe, I felt it was a little bit kind of tonally out of sync. I felt like two songs kind of mashed together to me. And then the last track is the Oculation of Mars, which, as you said, is the longest track. A bit more kind of airy and clean, and again a little bit different to the rest of the album. I liked the direction it was taken, the more kind of tranquil, kind of stripped back, and then it kind of jumps into this like kind of upbeat, kind of sludgy stoner doom kind of section, and then they go back to something clean and tranquil. There's some female vocals come in. Then it kind of goes into this almost like black metal meets sludge. I was just like, where the fuck is this coming from? And then
Norway, Dave. Norway is where it's coming from.
Norway. And then back into the clean section to end. And I felt like there were bits that I liked of it, but I felt overall there was parts I felt were maybe a little bit repetitive. And then there was quite a lot of transitions that I didn't always feel kind of worked. And I found myself kind of switching off at times until the black metal part came in, and I was like, what the fuck? I think I would have finished it there rather than I didn't think it needed to go back to another clean bit at the end. So it maybe just kind of dragged a little bit. So for me, like, I enjoyed a lot of it. The last 15 minutes of the album, which is about a third of the album, I had some issues with. But I think I had to keep remind myself this is a debut album. And when you think about it like that, it is quite impressive what they have put together on like their first offering. Yes, it has obvious influences, that's to be expected, but I do think you can hear a personality coming through from the band on this as well. And I would agree with you. I think the production is fantastic. I love love the guitar tone. The bass is really cool. It's very very metallic in the mix. And then you've got that kind of organic, very warm kind of drum sound. The vocal sounded great, like the kind of vicious tone he's got came through really well. And I liked a little bit of chanting as well. I thought that was quite different, a little bit unexpected. What we're thinking on the scores for Ultraritual? What are you thinking?
3.5. I really like this. Like I say, I think to me they're like almost the inverse of you. I think the longer they went and the more they threw into it, the more interested I was. The more I was kind of kept on the back foot, which I kind of enjoyed because stoner music in general tends to be pretty predictable. So if you can throw a couple of things at me that surprise me, you've got my attention, and they certainly do that. Like you're saying, if it's a debut album as well, and they've come from all those different backgrounds, sometimes it takes that get it out your system to sink down into something. But I think there's loads of talent here. Love the production, and it's one of those ones that it sat in the background of my week's listening. You know what I mean? I came back to it a few times. I didn't like rinse this one all in one day like I sometimes do with some albums, and then don't listen to it till we review it. I kind of just sat in the background because it was one that I, regardless of mood, I could kind of throw on, which is kind of great. So 3.5 out of 5.
Cool. I'll go 3 out of 5 on this one. I think they've got a lot of potential. I think when the album was kind of like firing on all cylinders, it sounds great. I really enjoyed it, but then there are moments where I felt it wasn't just quite up to standard yet, or stylistically it's maybe not quite as smooth as I'd like. But this is a debut album, so I think that sort of stuff will come with time. And I think once they find their formula, I think the consistency will then come as well on their album. So I'm going to go 3 out of 5 on this one. It
Nice.
drops on March 10th on Ripple Music. I'll put some links below to the band, to the pre-order on Bandcamp and stuff. Check it out. Let us know what you think. Stick some comments in. That is the review. Thank you for checking it out. We'll be back with another review very soon. But until then, take care. Speak to you soon.
Bye, everyone.